Hello, and you are very, very welcome to the launch of the Dublin Belfast Economic Corridor initiative. Now, I'm David McWilliams. I'm delighted. Sorry for the delay. It was a little bit of broadband hassle. You know what happens sometimes in this country. Your best laid plans, you're sitting there, everyone's ready to rock and roll, and then suddenly you have a broadband issue. Okay, so thank you so much for your patience. You're very welcome wherever you are in the country, or even if you're across there in the UK on the other side, because I know we're going to be joined in a little while by a UK politician, Robin Scott, about what is going on in the UK. But if you are joining us, you're very, very welcome. Now, the Dublin or Dublin Belfast Economic Corridor is, and this is the key thing to appreciate, by far and away the most vibrant hub of the economy. In the next 20 years, over 60% of Irish people will live in this corridor. If you imagine looking at the map and looking at somewhere south of Dublin like Bray and going out about 20 miles and then watching that corridor go all the way up, maybe as far as Carrickfergus or Ballymena, that is what we're talking about. It is the heart of the economy. It is the most demographically intensely populated place. And ultimately, it's going to decide the future of the island of the economy. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We have a report out. I'll tell you all about that in a minute. But because we're a wee bit late, I'm going to actually accelerate. I'm going to take all your questions. I'll talk to you about Twitter and all that in a couple of minutes. But I now want to go first because this is an initiative between county councils. This is an initiative of cooperation, north and south, and between councils. And I want to first go to our first speaker, who's on the line, Owen Keegan, who's the Chief Executive of Dublin City Council. And Owen is going to kick off and give us his thoughts about the future of the corridor and its importance. Take it away, Owen.
Thanks very much, David. Ladies and gentlemen, on my own behalf and on behalf of my local authority Chief Executive colleagues and our two university presidents, I'm delighted to welcome you all this morning to the formal launch of the Dublin Belfast Economic Corridor initiative. I want to acknowledge the government ministers, ambassadors, local councillors and representatives of state agencies, government departments, academic institutions, business organisations and other stakeholders who are or will be with us this morning. You're all very welcome. In launching the initiative today, there are a number of things we're trying to achieve. We want to raise the profile of the Dublin Belfast Economic Corridor among stakeholders. We want to present the findings of research, which we believe validates the corridor approach to promoting economic development. And finally, we want to reinforce the case for a collaborative, local authority-based approach to economic development along the corridor. A number of factors have contributed to the development of this initiative. First, the fact that local authorities on both sides of the border have been given an enhanced role in economic development, and we're keen to do more in this space. Second, recognition of the fact that local authorities already have a good record in working together and cooperating cross-border in economic development matters. And third, a greater recognition of the important role of economic corridors, which exploit good transportation and communication infrastructure links as engines of economic growth with potential to add value and accelerate growth. A series of meetings between the 8 local authority chief executives, which commenced back in 2018, led to the commissioning of a research project jointly undertaken by Dublin City University and the University of Ulster, which considered the merits and potential of the Dublin Belfast Economic Corridor economic development proposition. While the research reinforced our belief in the merits of the approach, the launch of the initiative was delayed until there was greater certainty regarding the outcome of Brexit. The COVID pandemic has further delayed matters. However, it has also highlighted the potential for remote working, which reinforces the case for a corridor approach to promoting economic development. Finally, this initiative we're launching today is fundamentally about increased partnership and cooperation between participating local authorities, using our own resources and networks in an effort to accelerate economic development along the corridor for the benefit of the communities and citizens we serve. I hope it will have your support. Thank you.
Owen, thank you very much for that indeed. Now, those of you who will know me will know that I took this cooperation a little bit further and married somebody from East Belfast. So this is a world I know extremely, extremely well in terms of cooperation, familial ties, and the potential that is there for more understanding, more economic initiatives across this side of the island, across the border. I now want to go, we've turned the tables a little bit. I want to go straight now to, we have two obviously excellent speakers now, and I want to go straight to them. It's Tánaiste Leo Varadkar and Conor Murphy, who's the Minister for Finance of the Northern Ireland Executive. I think I can go directly to the Tánaiste first. Tánaiste Varadkar, are you there?
Problems here, so I hope you can see me and hear me.
Yes, there you are. Tánaiste, can you tell me, by the way, well done the other night on the debate. It's great to see this conversation starting in the country. Really, really interesting. Give me your sense of your vision for this part of the country, Tánaiste.
Well, you know, if you think about it, what the Good Friday Agreement is based on is three things: cooperation and power sharing in Northern Ireland, ever closer cooperation between North and South, and also ever closer cooperation East-West between Britain and Ireland. And I see this as part of Strand 2, bringing North and South closer together, ever deeper cooperation of all forms, political and economic. And to me, this is very much part of Strand 2, the agreement, enhancing economic and social cooperation between Dublin and Belfast and all of the parts in between, including Drogheda and Dundalk, which we've designated as growth centres in Project Ireland 2040, places like Newry, for example, as well. And if you think about it, for a millennium now, the major economic centres on the island have been Dublin, since it was founded by the Vikings, and Belfast in the northeast, that huge industrial centre that used to be, in fact, the major economic centre on the island. And you have 2 million people living along the corridor. And it's not just about Dublin and Belfast, it's everything in between. You've major universities, you've major airports. And to a certain extent, because of the events of 100 years ago, these two major urban centres, this major economic corridor, was split and kind of turned our backs on each other in a certain way. And I'd really like that to turn around. And you know, one thing that I reflect on the other day is Dublin, for example, is twinned with Barcelona, twinned with Beijing, twinned with Nablus in Palestine. Why is Dublin not twinned with Belfast? You know, because there should be so much more contact between the two cities and all the places along the route. 2 million people, half the nation's or half the island's GDP, and real opportunities, I think, for further growth and further development, and even marketing the region internationally. Because sometimes when we fight for investment, we're fighting with, the Randstad in Netherlands, the Ruhr area in Germany, 2 million people, 7 universities, all of that, a much stronger proposition sometimes.
Again, Conor Murphy, if you listen to it, first of all, Conor, how are you? Good to see you. Thank you for waiting.
I'm very good.
You're a little bit Good. The Tánaiste there was talking about, marketing, tangible things, marketing, the fact that we've 2 million people living in this corridor, but increasingly we have to market ourselves as one area. In terms of your own vision, and I know this is your neck of the woods, you're living from the corridor, what do you see, let's say, in 4 or 5 years' time? Or maybe give us 10, because 4 or 5 years in Ireland is always too short time horizon.
Well, as you rightly say, along the beautiful part of Ringagullion in South Armagh, very well. The issues that referred to in terms of the interruption of the corridor that partition caused 100 years ago, and how we've been, I think, trying ever since to try and get some synergy back into the relationships between the two major cities on the island. And he's correct in what he said there. The potential of pooling all of those assets between both cities and the corridor along that, the universities, the ports, the infrastructure, the population, all of that, I think, globally in terms of marketing is a hugely important tool, but also domestically in terms of a growth driver for the island as a whole. And of course, we want to see, as he has said, not just growth in the two cities, but in that corridor along the way, areas that I represent, which I think particularly were affected, those areas in Newry and in Dundalk, either side of the border, that suffered as a consequence that became, in effect, an economic wasteland over the years since partition, and through very diligent effort from the councils on both sides, and that has now expanded into all the councils along the corridor. That local government drive, I think, has been hugely important over the years in putting together plans and ideas. And I suppose what we do want to see in 5 years' time is plans like this one today, which is hugely important, moving into the implementation phase. And let's start to put timelines and investment that is needed into these plans. Let's start to get the machinery that we have for North-South cooperation, both at local government and at the Belfast Executive and government in Dublin level through the North-South arrangements, the East-West arrangements. Let's start getting these plans into progress action points that are supported with investment and are driven forward by both governments and by local government as well.
That's very interesting, Conor, because what Minister Murphy's there talking about is the practical things we can do. I'm always intrigued, by the way, at the extraordinary business acumen of people from County Louth. I don't know if you've ever seen that. The amount of billionaires and multimillionaires in this country who live in the wee county is extraordinary. No, really. You know, it's an amazing thing. But what underpins this, Leo, is infrastructure. I remember driving to Belfast in the 90s, where you stopped at Swords, and you stopped at Drogheda, and you stopped at Dundalk, and you stopped at Newry. We can more or less go all the way as far as Banbridge these days. In terms of tangible infrastructure, Taoiseach, what do you see happening, and where do you see that role?
Well, as you say, the road is pretty good. There's room for some improvement, but it is pretty good. I'd like to see high-speed rail, and it's one of the things that we're committed to as part of the National Development Plan and Project Ireland 2040, which is an all-island rail review. And to me, you know, if you could get by rail from Dublin city centre to Belfast city centre in an hour or so, that would really change things. You know, I don't need to spell it out as the kind of difference it could make in terms of people, you know, still being able to do a day's work and also travel between the two cities. So I think there's a lot of potential there. There's already plans, obviously, you know, around linking up the all-island energy network for electricity. Some of that's controversial, but it is definitely on the plans. But I think as well, one thing that we might consider doing is things like joint trade missions, for example. And I'd be very impressed to see how Manchester and Liverpool work together now that they have strong mayors, and they do joint trade missions together. Basically join their assets in order to promote investment in their mega city region, if you like. And, you know, North Carolina, for example, where they have the research triangle, 3 cities working very closely together, and the 3 together creating a scale that allows them to compete internationally that they wouldn't be able to do on their own. So I think they're the kind of things that I'd like to see happen. We have a North-South body, Intertrade Ireland, which has a remit for promoting trade and economic development north-south, but doesn't have an external element really. And, you know, maybe we could do something using that body, or alternatively IDA and Invest in I coming together and organising things like joint visits and joint trade missions. There is a good cooperation between Belfast and Dublin as well, which I think is part of that.
Well, I mean, Conor, what is fascinating here for me is what both of you are talking about is presenting the region as a whole, as an integrated piece, and marketing us. And that kind of takes us away in many ways from Brexit, from border pulls, from all that stuff. Say, okay, all that stuff's going on, but these are things we could do. Again, is your sense from the executive side that this is something you'd like to push, that, you know, to go together as one group? Do you feel that this is something you can get through?
Yes, I think absolutely. I mean, even with in the worst days of the conflict, there was a very substantial, at local government level, collaboration. I was in the council in Newry many years ago when we had that very strong linkage with Dundalk and with Louth, and that has continued even through darker days and more uncertain days than we currently live in, and we do live in uncertain times. And Brexit and the COVID experience have all added to that uncertainty. But yes, there is a huge opportunity to market that area as one, to recognise, as previous studies have recognised, the potential of the growth of the population there, the diversity, the economic strength of both cities, and that entire corridor put together is much greater than the individual parts of it. And of course, it would be madness not to try and take advantage of that, as I say, both on an international scale in terms of marketing and and branding, but also domestically across the island. And we have, I'm sure the Taoiseach will be the first to admit, we have a responsibility as people in government for ensuring regional balance and growth right across the island. And of course, we take that very seriously. But we also recognise and look to where we have great strengths and how we can harmonise those and pool those and push forward. So even with Brexit and the barriers that it may throw up, there are still opportunities there in terms of the protocol. We have the North-South arrangements, which are an integral part of the Good Friday Agreement, which we have had up working again, even with the interruption in terms of the actual meetings that we can do. But we have been doing a lot of work virtually and online over that. And I think there is opportunities to align programmes like the Project Ireland 2040, the infrastructure investment proposals we have north of the border, the City Deal, which comes from Belfast right down to the border area in my own area, things like the Southern Relief Road, which would connect the port of Warrenpoint traffic directly onto the A1 M1 link. And unfortunately, the experience you had in the 90s is now in reverse, with the poorer roads are on the northern side of the border. So we do need to invest in the A1 to improve that in terms of safety. And of course, as the Taoiseach just said, one of the big projects that we've frequently talked about at North-South arrangements is the rail project, that connection between Dublin and Belfast. But our ambitions are greater than that. I think we should be looking at a rail connection, a strong rail connection between Derry through Belfast to Dublin to Cork and perhaps even on to Limerick. And those sort of plans and investment, I think, would really transform this island, with the economic corridor between Belfast and Dublin being a key driver in all of that.
Conor Murphy, thank you so much. I was going to leave just the last word with the Taoiseach on this one. It's what Conor's talking about there is kind of reimagining the image of the country, okay, in your head, okay? And again, infrastructure has an amazing ability to paint a different picture for what the country looks like. Taoiseach, just before we go, in 1 minute, if you see an opportunity, a real one, tangible one to grasp, what is it along the corridor?
Oh, I should have thought about that one. I think one potential one is Dublin Airport, which is essentially Ireland Airport, used as the main gateway on and off the island. And I hope it'll be very busy again in a year or two's time, but not linked properly to that railway. And I think it would be hugely beneficial if we could link Dublin Airport to the railway, to Dublin City, to Belfast City, and all the places in between. Not with a view to stealing business from Belfast City or even from Aldergrove, but I think that would be a real benefit if we could do that over the next 10 years.
Brilliant. Well, listen, Conor Murphy up in Belfast and Minister Leo Varadkar here. Thank you both very much. And again, thank you for your time. We're trying to resettle the ship now after that broadband debacle, but now we're all good. So thank you both very much. And again, lots and lots of stuff to think about there. We're talking about regional issues. We're talking about practical issues. We're talking about high-level politics. But of course, in the backdrop has been Brexit and all the stuff that's been going on for the last while, which has, again, changed not so much the facts on the ground, but the mood music. But maybe that is changing. And now we have an opportunity to talk to Robin Walker, the Minister for State from Northern Ireland. Robin's talking to us from London this morning. Robin, how are you? And thank you so much for staying on the line.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me.
Not at all. Now, Robin, very briefly, what are your own thoughts on this Belfast-Dublin or Dublin-Belfast economic corridor?
Well, I think it's a huge area of opportunity, and I think it's clear that the two economies need to work with each other as seamlessly and collaboratively as possible. Greater prosperity in one will benefit the other. And your report draws the comparison with the Oxford, Cambridge and Milton Keynes corridor. I hope that we can together replicate the success that corridor is already beginning to have. There are some key similarities, particularly in the urban centres of Belfast and Dublin, with strong tech centres and lots of exciting startups. And I think another area that excels, which I think this report demonstrates, is the strength of the universities and their ability to work together and do more on cross-border research, which I think is an area that I'd be keen to further explore with the executive and the Irish government. We just heard the Taoiseach talking about the airports and the tourism opportunity. I think there is going to be a key driver of economic growth once the market can start up again. And Northern Ireland does benefit from Dublin being an international hub for visitors, and an increase in international tourism would be to the benefit of both economies. But we also need to look at the opportunities for an increase in demand for staycations and holidays nearer to home, which I think is a great opportunity, both for Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland.
But Robin, it's very pleasing for me to hear this because, Brexit has, it's muddied the waters, it's changed the debate, people have got upset, it's brought big issues like identity back on let's say, back into sharp relief. But what I want to talk to you is, let's put that aside, the British government itself, when you see these cooperations, when you see the Northern Irish Executive and our government, what's your sense of what you can do to help this along from the British side?
I think we recognise that there's a need to invest, there's a need to support this. I think we saw with the New Decade, New Approach deal what happens when the British and the Irish governments can work together to support the executive coming together and making progress. And it was great to see the £1 billion of investment in infrastructure that was prioritised by that. That includes supporting the executive's Better Connecting Dublin and Belfast strategy with flagship projects on the A5, the A6, the A1 junction programme, which was mentioned earlier, and looking at the long-term potential of things like the Newry Southern Relief Road, which I know the Department for Infrastructure is planning a new consultation on. I think those types of projects can work when the governments are prepared to work together and collaborate with the executive, and that's what we've seen with NDNA and the restoration of the executive through the energy of the two governments being able to work together. I think that's a great opportunity for this growth corridor, but not forgetting the crucial role that councils have played and the crucial role that the bottom-up process has played as well. And I see that in my work on city and growth deals, where I think we have some really exciting deals supported by both the UK government and the executive, working with councils in the Belfast city region and in the mid and southwest area, which are also benefiting some of the cross-border infrastructure and some of the investment in innovation, which this corridor would support.
Robin, just before you go, because I know you're in a rush, and this is, again, between ourselves, when we're just talking, the mood music has changed and for the worst with, during and past the Brexit negotiations. What's your sense as Minister for State of where we're going to go in terms of the relationship between the two islands? Because again, at the very top, as you know, leadership comes down from the top, there's a tone set, and then we can all go from there. What's your sense of where we're going to go in the next couple of years, particularly as you're in that position as Minister for State?
Well, I think we've seen challenges throughout this process, there's no doubt about that, but we also see the indispensable nature of the British-Irish relationship and the importance of being able to work together, both in Northern Ireland and on East-West issues. And I think as long as we focus on those, as long as we focus on areas of mutual opportunity and supporting growth in all of our economies, I think we can make this whole process a resounding success. We can make sure that the people of Northern Ireland benefit from it, and we can make sure that we maintain the strong East-West relations, which are a crucial component of the Good Friday Agreement.
Robin Walker, listen, thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy and we were a little bit overdue. So again, thanks very much, and we'll talk to you soon again. So that was, ladies and gentlemen, that was Robin Walker, the Minister for State for the Northern Irish Executive, the British representative in the Northern Irish firmament. So you had there the Minister for Finance of the Northern Irish Executive, number one, our own Taoiseach, number two, and the Minister for State, number three, from the London side. So very much the top people making the decisions, and those decisions will percolate down to the local authorities, and then that will become a reality and that will become tangible. But I think it is fascinating to find such what I would describe as an accord of ideas, a uniformity of ideas, a willingness to go and get things done and realize that if this country is to survive, or not survive, succeed and prosper more than we have prospered, the corridor is elemental to that. Now, you'll know in another incarnation, I am an economist, and economists love data, we love research. There's always a word in the economics watchword, which is, if you can't measure something, you can't manage it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the research on corridors, integration, the economic benefits. And I'm delighted. And again, we have two professors. Thank you both so much for waiting. We've got Professor Derek O'Brien from DCU and Professor Owen McGuinness of the University of Ulster. Derek, we'll kick off with you. And again, thank you so much for waiting. Tell me about your research. What have you found? Where are the issues? Where do you think this is going? And explain to me where you feel cooperation can lead to and what the benefits could be.
Okay, thanks, David. I'll kick off as I look at just to start by saying really lucky to be working on a piece of work with my colleagues Owen and Jordana Corrigan and Neil Blair in Ulster. Really, I'll look at the lessons from similar initiatives and the challenges we might face. And then I think Owen is going to look at sort of the strengths and the potential opportunities and really focus, I guess, on the opportunities. So in relation to the lessons from other economic corridors, we looked at examples in other parts of the island of Ireland, in Britain, in Europe, and further afield in emerging economies. The examples were useful in offering a variety of rationales for deeper cooperation and collaborative initiatives on the Dublin Belfast corridor. But I think one of the lessons we took, there's a real need to heed the warning, no one size fits all. But the research does note two key success factors. The first is that stakeholders, and that really the local authorities and the universities and all the other stakeholders in the region, we need to be aware both of the strengths and the weaknesses of the complementarities on the different sides of the cross-border territory and the economic and knowledge flows that characterise the territory. So it's understanding those two distinct issues. The second success factor is really about when you're organising the governance of such cross-border initiatives, it's important to involve all the relevant stakeholders active within the territory, including all levels of government. We also looked at sort of, the ingredients for successful cooperation. So we found that, maybe 4 or 5 are really relevant to this. So cooperation, among the actors on the corridor needs consistent time and energy and support for the corridor to be nurtured and to grow. A recognition that local actions can deliver strategic objectives. So in a very practical way, things like innovation centres and skills strategies can help deliver strategic objectives. And two, I suppose, remaining lessons, I guess I'd really like to highlight. The first is that idea of taking a medium to long-term perspective. So less big bang and more slow burn. That's critical, particularly around developing governance and securing resources. And then finally, I guess, early wins can help cement the partnership, and give support to the agreed governance and ensure sustainable cooperation. I suppose in relation to the challenges, some are shared across the border. You've mentioned some of these earlier on in terms of the impact of Brexit. We'd also highlight, the length of the corridor and global challenge of climate change and the challenges it raises for local authorities as the key responders in terms of mitigation and adaptation strategies. But we'd also highlight things like housing, population trends, skills development, and finally business startup rates.
So Derek, what we're going to do is we're going to hold you on the line because I want to go to Professor McGuinness now. By the way, that dog of yours, is that barking at the back? That's what I love about these Zoom calls, right? Is that you're trying to be all professional, right? And then suddenly a kid comes running in and says, Dad, or the dog. And we have a very, very grumpy Labrador downstairs. And I'm just warning everybody, if the fella from Amazon or wherever my kids have shopped arrives, there will be an explosion of an aged Labrador trying to mark out her territory. So Derek, your dog sounds like a very well-behaved creature in comparison to our hound. So if our hound gets going, by all means, it's COVID time. We let these things go. Derek, thank you very much. Stay on the line. I have Professor McGuinness on the line. Professor McGuinness, how are you?
I'm very well, David. Thanks. Thanks very much for having me.
Where are you talking to me from?
I'm in Warrenpoint, so I'm kind of midway along the corridor, I suppose is the best way of putting it. So just near the border.
The place that Conor Murphy was talking about has got now the bottlenecks as you go into Newry.
Yeah, we're responsible for a lot of it, or at least I suppose. Anyway.
It's a beautiful part of the world. I'd advise anybody, if you're driving Dublin Belfast and you have a little bit of time, take a right at Newry and go around the far side, and you'll end up at Newcastle and then flying over across. It's a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. And the Mourne Mountains, probably the best kept secret on this island. Beautiful. Yeah,
certainly is, David, and round to Strangford and all of that into that East Down part of the world. But yeah. I suppose it sounds like we're going into local loyalties here, as opposed to that's probably what we're trying to avoid here along the corridor as a cooperative effort.
All I'm saying is to the Southerners on the line who might not know that pocket of the country very well, I advise you, take a right at Newry and scoop up around. It's well worth it. Now, Professor McGuinness, let us talk about your research. What were you looking for? What did you find?
Well, I was, as Derek was saying there, we kind of concentrated a bit on the lessons, but I was going to talk a little bit about strengths. And a lot of that's been covered, David, with your interview with the ministers. I mean, you're looking at a very dynamic, young, well-educated population. You know, it's not only 2 million, but probably forecast now to grow to perhaps 2.5 million by 2040 within the Ireland 2040 concept. And you're looking at a population that is diverse, increasingly diverse, maybe up to 15 to 20% of that population being born from somewhere else, born off the island. So you're looking at it's an attractive place in ways to live. That causes its own challenges. Derek has just mentioned there around housing and the kind of pressure points there, but also in terms of congestion, given the kind of amount of employment that is there along the corridor. So you have a lot of strength there, and you have strength obviously in the business community, and you'll be speaking to some of those people in the next panel. You have a very strong both FDI business community there, but also a kind of a traditional domestically based community. I think for us, when we saw those strengths and when you saw the challenges, and you took some of the lessons from other corridors, our sense was that the opportunities were around both deepening some of the growth patterns, and then trying to broaden or make those more inclusive, both along the corridor, but with maybe more spillover out of the corridor into other areas. I think the sense here, I think we could go back to Sir George Quigley's idea that from the 90s that a Belfast-Dublin corridor could actually lift the whole island economy as opposed to just being for that region. So we're thinking things here like deepening clustering activities, which are already starting there along the corridor. You've both in traditional sectors, but also probably even more importantly in some of the more new and emerging sectors, the likes of fintech, the likes of some of the other kind of high-tech services, creative industries, those sorts of spaces. And then I think looking at the kind of research strengths that are there, we've seven of the universities and higher education institutes along the corridor between Belfast and Dublin, and there's probably more to be done there in terms of teasing out some of the synergies and research institutes there, I think, as well. So I suppose if I was summing it up, I would say the opportunities probably lie in pooling expertise in a way, but also kind of trying to raise capability within the business community, and in particular maybe see if there's more synergies can be got out of the FDI community and into the traditional domestic firms. The OECD have kind of dwelt on that recently as to how we might do that better.
Well, it's interesting, Owen. I see Derek in the corner of my eye. You're nodding your head away there in the corner. But Owen, what I've always been intrigued with, and I think you did it very, very well. It's like there's 2 or 3 levels here. There's the local business community, and as I said at the top, I'm always intrigued by how many wealthy fellows there are in Louth. Right? There is an extraordinary, from the McCanns to Larry Goodman to the Glen Dimplex guys. These are big firms. And then of course your friend Mr. High up in South Down. These are nodes of great economic development. You also are going to be later on talking to the director of Facebook Data, who again are up in Dundalk. What intrigues me, guys, gents, is I'm always a man who looks at the flags on the back of cranes in Dublin. Around the city of Dublin, the amount of Armagh flags and County Down flags on the back of cranes. This is the real synergy, because the north has more capacity than the south. Okay, wages are lower, house prices are lower, costs of business are lower. The south has demand but not enough supply. The north arguably has too much supply and not enough demand. How do we meld those together, gentlemen?
Well, I think I think actually getting to know what the supply is, if you like, and where the demand is probably the first thing. I think I worked for a number of years in Intertrade Ireland, David, and that would be a good example of an organisation that tries to kind of identify where those opportunities are, from public procurement right through to sort of private supply chains. I think the chief executive is in a later panel today, could speak to that. That is a key piece to it in terms of that market intelligence. I think also if you have the councils working closer together, they have been over the last while, and even further together. Some of those opportunities will sort of morph out of that. I think that they, in a sense, will get to know one another better, and then get to know the opportunities more readily, more earlier.
The thing is, you might get them to know them far too well. Like my case, that was, and then that's a whole different kettle of fish. Derek, can I give you the last word in this? Because what we're looking at is the possibilities, the opportunities, the fact that amazingly, the last 100 years has been a disaster in terms of economic and social cooperation between what were essentially, sister and brother cities. Cities. Looking forward, Derek, what's your sense of where we're going?
I think there's two very exciting things have happened in the last number of years. One is the development of powers or competences with the local authorities, particularly on economic development on this side of the border and on spatial planning on the northern side of the border. I think there's a lot of experience to be shared between the 8 local authorities, and I think the universities are very keen to work with them in sharing that experience. But I would think actually the exciting thing for me is the learning between the partners over the next 5 to 10 years. There is a huge amount of very different and varied experience between the 8 local authorities that I think they could really benefit from sharing each other. So it's not just the market intelligence or the examination of local and the regional economy. It's also about building collaboration between the public institutions. Maybe that's that.
Well, I mean, it seems to me, but thank you both very much. And again, what I'm saying is, please keep at the research, because it's all very well to be chatting about the good thing and feeling a warm feeling in our bellies about what's possible. But we need the numbers, we need the data. We also need those opportunities to be identified, and then for yourselves to funnel that into discussion and going back up to the top where the politicians say, okay, let's go that way. So listen, thank you both very much. And again, thank you both very much for your patience. I think we're back on track. We moved things around a little bit. Nobody's to know the differ. So thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, David.
Not at all. Now, again, this is a very, very fascinating opportunity. I don't think we realize how unique this is to have something like a corridor that was absolutely severed in the middle for 100 years. So no economic development, as you'd imagine in the rest of the world, has taken place. Now, the downside is the tragedy of that. The upside is, and this is the key, that very few other countries in Europe have the opportunity to get it right, because very few other countries in Europe, you can argue only the border down the middle of Germany might have had a similar dislocating effect in terms of economics. So we really have something unique to work with here. And that's what I always feel. Don't look at the negatives, because we know what they are. Look at what is potentially here. And what potentially here is something unique that no other country has, which is almost like an economic experiment to resuscitate a relationship that has been dormant and make that relationship come to life. I now want to switch to the present cabinet. We talked to on Taoiseach earlier on. I'm now going to talk to Darragh O'Brien. Darragh O'Brien, of course, is the Minister for Housing, Local Government and Heritage. He's on the line. Darragh, where are you?
Here I am. David, how are you? In the Custom House in Dublin.
How are things? All good?
Things are good, busy, thankfully, but difficult time for everyone, but we're getting there and progress is being made, which is always good. So great to be here this morning.
Explain to me, Darragh, you and I could talk about housing all day, but let's park that. Let's park that bus for the moment, right? Let's do the Jose Mourinho approach to discussions. Park the bus there, and we'll talk about cooperation. You are very much, this is your constituency, North Dublin, right? This is your neck of the woods. And tell me about your sense of the cooperation that's potentially possible, what could come out of it.
Yeah, as you already said, I'm born and reared in Fingal, and Malahide is my hometown. And I suppose from a personal level, if you leave politics out of it, and I've actually seen the development over the last, 15, 20 years in real life, actually, with normalization of ties, and people trading north and south on a daily basis. So the potential is colossal. But I think for my role as Minister with responsibility for local government, where you see on a daily basis now as our local authorities along the Belfast-Dublin Economic Corridor actually interacting and working with each other on a daily basis. There's colossal potential. Look, all your speakers from the Taoiseach right the way through to now have actually identified those areas, the infrastructural projects that we can work on and continue to improve on. But the ties between our local authorities, like use the example of Newry and Mourne with Louth, my own local authority of Fingal County Council, it's a normal thing for our staff at every level to be dealing with their counterparts in the north. And that in itself drives that cooperation and drives the opportunities. Just a couple of weeks after Brexit, if I could say, I brought the former British ambassador to Ireland, Robin Barnett, right through Fingal, to try to show him the businesses that in my own area that were trading on a regular basis with Britain. And what was struck by was the positivity that people and businesses had, and it was good for the former ambassador to see that too. But like the ties between north and south and east and west are effectively unbreakable, even with socially, but also economically as well. So the potential is vast, and it is being realised. We can always go a lot further. But the Taoiseach has mentioned Project Ireland 2040, our own national planning framework, which identifies the north-south corridor as well, and the Belfast-Dublin corridor, as well as an area of major future potential growth.
No, Dara, it's very interesting talking to you there. It's always struck me, that people do business with people they know. This is something that we forget, is that because you trust them, because you know them. You might know the family, you might have done business with them before, you might have been in a hole and they got you out of a hole. Networks, family, community, but actually knowing people. So it's great that at the very, very top, our political infrastructure is working, not as it should be, very clearly, with respect to North and South, but it's working in the context of what we have. How do you foster those get-to-know-you relationships on the ground? Because that's what makes the world tick.
Well, I think two things, actually, in relation to at a governmental level. Since the new government has been in place and the executive has reformed in the north, there's been regular contact. Like I deal with my counterpart, Nicola Mallon, on a regular basis. Conor Murphy, you had earlier on, and Edwin Poots and others in areas of joint interest and areas of cooperation. And there's much more focus on that, particularly through the Taoiseach Shared Island Fund as well. So I think really what it is about is tangible projects, to be honest with you, things that will improve the quality of life for our own citizens. And if you look at even how we've managed through the pandemic, our local authorities, both in the north and in the south, have actually led from the front because they've been government on the ground with people, with our citizens. So how do you forge it further? Investment is crucial. Frankly, secondly, though, is real tangible projects where, people can actually see the benefits of us working together. As I said to you earlier on in my opening remarks, it's incredible if I just look back 20 years from where I live myself about an area of North Dublin that it's just completely normal for people to travel up and down, between Belfast and Dublin and everywhere in between. That wasn't the case only 20, 25 years ago for a sizable portion of our society. I look at my own family, my own daughter who's 12. Thankfully, she will have never known of any of those barriers that are there before. But it's us and the generation that come up behind us who are really going to realise that potential. Taoiseach mentioned earlier on Dublin Airport. If you look at the airport itself as an international airport, in normal events would deliver actually 3% of GNP. It's responsible for 20,000 direct jobs on campus, 115,000 indirect jobs. Many of them actually not just in Dublin or Fingal, but are in the region, are in North and in South, businesses that are trading in both areas. And that's good to see. And I see it as well in construction in my own, department with regard to housing. You've mentioned the flags on cranes from Armagh and from County Down and other places. That is true. There's a seamless, cooperation and interaction between that sector, North and South. And that's a good thing because we can always learn from each other. But in real terms, how do we move it on? Investment, tangible projects, things that we've identified, under the Shared Island Fund, and we can always improve relations between ourselves, North and South. It's in a decent space at the moment, and East and West. And I think if you look at how we've managed that through what could have been a very divisive subject such as Brexit, it's an opportunity, actually, I think, in one respect, to reset the relationship between Britain and Ireland and in the north and south to see, well, how can we, further enhance those relationships, because they're slightly outside the European Union. We look towards a Nordic Council type situation. They're all things that will help drive future growth, future cooperation and normalisation into the future.
Great stuff. Very, very interesting. Dara, we will Minister O'Brien. I should be saying Dara. I shouldn't be called me by the first time. Should be all formal.
Call me Dara, David. It's all right.
Dara, listen, off you go. We'll talk to you again. Thank you so much for that, and thanks for your time this morning. That was the Minister there, and again, a local politician deep in the ground. He's talking about the relationship between the north, the south, and the corridor. If you want to see the day-to-day reality of this, there's a Tesco's outside Banbridge as you drive south from Belfast. You go in there on a Saturday afternoon and you will see hordes of Southern Regis. And not only Southern Regis, but lots, and this is what I find interesting, lots and lots of immigrants, Polish people, Indian people with Southern Regis shopping up north. That is what's going to happen. We have an extraordinary 17% of the population here in this country was not born in this country. And for them, lots and lots of the stuff we're talking about, or we learned in history, is like, what's that all about? So there is cooperation. We see it all the time. At the ground level, it's getting more and more fruitful. And that, I think, is fantastic, because believe me, 25 years ago, I think I was one of the very few people driving up and down that particularly patchy corridor just after the peace process, actually just before the peace process. Now all that has changed. And to give you a sense of how it's changed, to give you a sense of what we're talking about, I'd like you to watch this video, because this video tells us exactly what is going on, what the potential is, and what the opportunity is there for us to grasp. So have a gander at this.
Situated on either side of the border, halfway between Dublin and Belfast, Louth County Council and Newry Down District Council have always had a history of neighbourly cooperation. In 2011, they formalised their strategic alliance by signing a Memorandum of Understanding.
The Memorandum of Understanding sets out the detailed workings of the strategic alliance between the two councils. The purpose of our strategic alliance is to support and promote the economic development and competitiveness of the region.
We work together to promote, strengthen and stimulate the social, cultural and economic links within and between the peoples of the region. Our strategic alliance has given us a framework to promote the region more effectively for inward investment and open up further opportunities for the sharing of services and coordinated management of key resources.
Cooperation activities involve working up and delivering joint projects and funding applications, as well as exploring opportunities for the coordination and sharing of services.
Tourism is an example of where our strategic alliance has been really effective. We are developing a greenway along Newry Canal and Carlingford Lough, which will initially link Carlingford and Newry. We came together to make a joint application for funding from the EU's Interreg Fund and received nearly €3.5 million towards developing this cross-border project.
We have fostered links between the business communities in each of our administrative areas, and there have been many joint conferences which have brought people together to learn and to network.
People in both our areas see our region as one economic entity. Businesses draw staff from both sides of the border and have premises and clients in each area.
The partnership between the councils has inspired businesses on the ground to look at the possibilities across the border when looking to expand. Stat Sports, a major player in the global sports performance sector, is an example of a company that began in Dundalk and expanded across the border into Newry.
At Stat Sports, we would be considered the leading provider of the technology in our industry. The company was started back in 2008 when we had the initial conversation, myself and Alan Clark, on the side of a football pitch. It was just a conversation about the technology or lack of technology in sports analysis at that time. It was a very small, off-the-cuff conversation that gathered momentum, and we launched our first product, the Viper product, in 2012, and we've just grown steadily since. At Stat Sports, we provide GPS product performance monitoring device. Our latest is our Apex Pro series, and right through, so from pro teams to the likes of Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Tottenham Hotspur, Juventus and a range of NFL, NBA, MLS teams. It was fantastic for us to be based in Dundalk. The big attraction was the availability of the resources and people and expertise within the RDC in DKIT. The move to Newry was probably organic because a lot of our clients in the early days were in the mainland in the UK, Premier League teams and rugby teams. But also a big part of our reasoning for moving to Newry as well was the support that was on offer from Invest and I, and that was really fantastic. The advantages of being based on the Dublin to Belfast Economic Corridor, for us, it's the availability of talent. Where we are in Newry, we have staff who come to the office from as far away as South Dublin and North Belfast. So for us being right in the middle of that corridor is fantastic for us to recruit and be able to retain some good talent. On a regular basis, we would have clients or partners coming to visit us in our office. 3 airports within an hour drive from our office has been fundamental to make that seamless and to attract people to be able to build those relationships. Another advantage of being in this economic corridor for us would be the amount of education platforms, and they play a big part in developing and nurturing great talent for Stat Sports to be able to tap into. What would I say to somebody looking to locate themselves here on this Dublin to Belfast Economic Corridor? There are many advantages, and it's finding the reasons that work with you and your business. I would actively encourage anybody who's thinking of relocating their business to really seriously consider the Dublin to Belfast Economic Corridor.
Deli Lights is a company that has gone the other way. Formed in Newry in 1994, its catering business has expanded south across the border in recent years.
Deli Lights was founded in the late 1990s by Brian and Jackie Reid, our founders, and the business has grown from 2 people to over 200. We're now delivering food to go to all 32 counties 6 days a week, and we're also selling our products internationally. The size of the market's probably about 100 million, and we would be one of the bigger players in the Irish market. Our customers are Costa, Sainsbury's, Applegreen, Tesco, Aldi, Lidl, and anywhere that people are picking up food to go. It's very easy for us to operate on both sides of the border. It's seamless. Our vans just go where the customers are. The biggest advantage is that the 2 biggest cities on the island are at either end of the corridor, and we are in the middle, so we can be in either of those 2 large cities within an hour, and that's very important. A lot of our business is concentrated in those 2 locations. Sometimes when we're growing quickly, we are looking for more people, and we've never had a problem in finding the right people. We've received financial and non-financial support from Newry and Moan District Council, Intertrade Ireland and Invest NI, and we found all of those agencies very supportive in aiding us to grow. I would say to any company thinking of locating in Ireland that they should think very seriously about locating on the Dublin Belfast Economic Corridor. It's a great place to live, and you are closest to the 2 main areas of population and markets in Ireland, being Dublin and Belfast.
So whether it's a global player or an Indigenous company, the ability to operate over and back across the border can bring plenty of benefits, and the work being done by Louth County Council and Newry, Mourne and Down District Council shows the possibilities for the Dublin-Belfast Economic Corridor.
The creation of the Dublin-Belfast Economic Corridor is really the next step in terms of cross-border cooperation. The benefits for business are enormous, with access to a highly skilled and well-educated workforce and the ability to get from one end of the corridor to the other in 2 hours.
Now is a good time to do this. We are coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we understand the value of collaboration. The 8 local authorities are ready to work together to create an environment along the corridor which will benefit existing businesses, as well as creating the ideal location for any new business coming into the region.
How are you doing there? If you're just joining us, you're very, very welcome. If you've been with us, it's great that you've been around. We've juggled things around a little bit, but next panel is really the epicenter of what we're talking about, which is where business, local authorities comes together. I thought just in that video, it was extremely well nailed by one of the speakers who said, look, here's the thing. The corridor has, at either end of it, is bookended by Dublin and Belfast. It is by far and away the most vibrant part of the country. And it leads us to the 2 biggest population centres. Now, we'd love to hear your opinion. So if you're on Twitter, look at hashtag DBEC on Twitter and give us your tuppence halfpenny, your threepence halfpenny, your half farthing or your euro on these issues. Because again, the idea here is we're reaching out to all of us, even if you don't think so, have a huge stake in getting the Dublin Belfast Economic Corridor right. Now we have a fantastic panel. What I'm going to do, it's a busy one, okay? There's a lot of screens going on. It's a busy panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce each person in turn so you know who everybody is, and then we're going to chit-chat from there. Representing the chief executives of Dublin Belfast Economic Corridor, I'm joined by Anne-Marie Farrelly, who is the chief executive of Fingal County Council. How are you, Anne-Marie? I'll come to you in 2 seconds. Just give us a wave, you can see me. Great stuff. Okay. Now, Facebook designs, builds, operates data centers to deliver its products and services. And joining us today is Niall McIntyre, the director of Facebook's data center site operations for the EMEA and APAC. Again, Niall, how are you doing? All good? Cool. We'll be back to you in 2 seconds. Intertrade Ireland is the cross-border trade and business development body set up to increase north-south trade and cooperation. And we're joined today by Margaret Harty of Intertrade Ireland. Margaret, how are you? Big wave. Yeah, you're there. All good. Okay. Now, Vane Valley is a progressive farmer-owned agribusiness based in County Armagh, employing 3,000 people in 34 locations across the island of Ireland. The chief executive of Vane Valley Foods Cooperative, Trevor Lockhart, joins us. Trevor, how are you? All good? Yeah, actually a lovely part of the world as well. I never realized you'd so many apples up there until I went and looked at your orchards. Lovely part of the world. We'll be back to you in 2 seconds. And of course now, back here, we're going from Armagh back to North Dublin. DCU is Ireland's fastest growing university with over 18,000 students and is the Sunday Times University of the Year in 2021. So to give us his insights into the corridor from the academic perspective, I'm joined by Professor Dara Keogh, who's the president of Dublin City University. Dara, how are you? Good to talk to you. We will be back to you in 2 seconds. So again, what I'm saying, we have a busy enough calendar here. We have a busy enough screen. Things are going on, but we're going to kick off now with Anne-Marie Farrelly of Fingal County Council. Tell me now, Anne-Marie, where are you? Where are you, Anne-Marie? Can I see you at all? I'm still looking at Dara. Hold on, poor old Dara's stuck on the screen. There you are. There you are. I like the bright lights. I like the see the lovely North Dublin sky at the back window there. Tell me, Anne-Marie, can 8 different councils, because you know the politics of this, can they actually work together, or is this all blather?
Good morning, David. Great to come to you from sunny Swords today. I suppose at the end of the day, as you mentioned yourself, it is about a willingness. So we do have a coalition of the willing right now. We want to build on that. Derek O'Brien mentioned the success factors of knowing your corridor, first of all, and that was the purpose of us having the research carried out, having a good knowledge about what's happening in the corridor. And then it needs more than the cooperation between the 8 local authorities. Obviously great to have the universities on board, scope to bring in other higher education institutes into that collaboration. And then back to the video piece, our businesses networking and cooperating together, north and south. And that is something I think one of the ways businesses reacted to Brexit very early on. They were looking to have 2 locations, one north, one south, and many of them chose to make that decision very early on as Brexit was just being spoken about. So I think the fact that that relationship is really opening up at all levels will assist this Belfast Economic Corridor and really get it going. And I suppose the level of ambition that we have, I suppose, is testament today with today's programme, and thanks to my own colleague, Emer O'Gorman, to have 4 government ministers, including a Taoiseach and the Minister of State, I suppose is really where we're positioning ourselves. We want to launch this really well. I suppose it is an established economic corridor, so it is about growing that brand, getting it recognised, and having everybody, I suppose, talking to each other first of all, but then making decisions that will help strengthen the corridor.
And just finally and briefly, Anne-Marie, what does success look like to you? What's success in this? Because again, we're talking, if you were to say, okay, in 5 years' time, David, this is success, what is it for you?
Well, we want the corridor to be recognised nationally and internationally, you know, as a place where you want to locate your business, really as a place that you can live and work and enjoy life. Tourism is a potential economic growth area. Already 6,000 jobs in the corridor related to tourism. So the likes of the Greenway mentioned in the video, plenty of scope to expand that type of offer on the East Coast and bring visitors north and south and having them turning left at the airport as well as heading into Dublin City and west. So that's really important.
Anne-Marie, I'm going to leave there, but I like that image. Turn left at the airport. No, I really do. I think that because, I mean, this is the way in which you create images in people's minds because, you know, the vast majority of us go out, we turn right, we head towards Dublin, the port. Suddenly you're saying, relax, turn left. You don't know what you're missing. Anne-Marie, thank you so much indeed. And again, thank you for being with us from sunny Swords. This is a new one to me. I've heard of the sunny southeast, but sunny Swords. I'll take it. Now, thank you so much, Anne-Marie. I now want to talk, Anne-Marie mentioned just there about direct foreign investment, etc. And there's no greater example of DFI than, I think, Facebook in Dundalk. And luckily, we have Niall McIntyre of Facebook with us. Niall, how are you?
I'm very good, David. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm in great form. Tell me about the campus up there in Dundalk. What was going on in Facebook that they said, you know what, we're going to go to that part of the world?
Yeah, I'm actually in Dundalk. I'm delighted to be actually here as a result of that. I'm really interested in this topic in particular in terms of the Dublin Belfast corridor. But the campus we've built is actually Meath. So I think people in Meath would really not like us. Folks stealing it on them. So
that's awful. That's awful.
Lots of competition between Meath and Louth during the years.
Broadcasted a schoolboy error.
You're quite all right.
Tell us more.
Yeah, no problem at all. So there's from a country perspective, in terms of political stability, strong regulatory framework, you're looking for stability in the long term. These are very large investments for a very long time. And then as you get down to more, you're deciding where within a country to put this, it becomes more, micro factors in terms of the ability of highly skilled people. And a lot of people have talked about this already. And we've been able to find absolutely superb talent right along the corridor. We've people represented in every one of those counties, both through construction, all of construction over the last 5 years, and long-term operations of our Meath data centre. And then similarly, having those local relationships, those partnerships with the community, in particular, the municipal authorities and the strong partnership approach there. We've had a great partnership experience with Meath County Council, for example. And then as you move towards more physical things like good infrastructure, good fibre for companies like us and data centres, really important, water, sewer, airports, roads. We had conversations about train connectivity earlier as well, and rail. And then lastly, things, from an energy perspective, like climate for cooling, Ireland's great for it, and renewable energy. So having access to good renewables is also important.
No, tell me that I haven't thought about this. Ireland is good for cooling. These are sort of natural advantages that you never think about. Explain that to me before we go. I mean, this is what I like. So I hadn't thought, because you look at the window and think, oh, God. In actual fact, my son showed me last night that we've got clouds and rain for the next week, apparently. But for you, that's a godsend, isn't it?
It can be, at least for cooling data centres, not for everything else. But we've been on a journey for a long time in terms of our approach to sustainability. And we started a new initiative called the Open Compute Project many years ago to really redesign and start our open source of data center designs actually for anyone to use and really improve the efficiency of the industry. And as part of that, we've been committed to, as many companies are, we're corporate citizen of the world, and we're all concerned with climate change at the moment. So, we've been committed to renewable energy for many years, and our goal has been to be powered by 100% renewables by the end of 2020, last year, which we've achieved, thankfully. And that's not just for data centres, but it's also for our offices in Dublin and Cork too. We've actually an agreement with Brookfield Renewable Energy as partners since 2016 to provide 380 megawatts of new wind energy, both to power our data centre and our offices. So and we continue to work with partners like that in new energy investments, and are actually looking to even go further. Like by 2030, we're hoping to reach net zero emissions for our full value chain, and that means going beyond just how we think about cooling and renewable energy powering our data centres and operations. It also goes into driving emissions out of our full supply chain in terms of how parts are manufactured, how we do construction, all of that. So we've a very long-term view around this. And for example, climate in Ireland really helps with a lot of this.
It's fantastic to hear, Niall. Thank you so much indeed. A man who's also able to translocate, to teleport himself from Dundalk to Clonee in one fell swoop. Cheers, Niall. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
Not at all, not at all. I'm going to move along now because Margaret Harty is of Intertrade Ireland. Margaret, where are you? Where are you? There you are.
I'm in Newry.
Intertrade Ireland is, of course, the statutory body that tries to foster cooperation, tries to get the whole thing going. I've done a few events in Belfast with yourselves when in the old days we could all sit around and have a chat properly, in the hall there. What are the advantages? When you're looking at cross-border opportunity, what do you see?
Well, we were set up as the cross-border trade body 20 years ago to promote economic cooperation and cross-border trade. And that makes sense where there is a mutual benefit to both economies to cooperate together. And I suppose we've been promoting the concept of collaboration between business, between academia, between industry, north and south. And I think somebody said together this morning, the sum of what you do together is much more than what you can do individually. And we know that collaboration and strength makes business more productive, more competitive. And the sum of what you do together will create something much more effective. And we see that on a daily basis, the advantage of that.
Margaret, can I ask you, let's say I'm watching this program, I'm sitting at home, I have a business idea, or I have a business, right? I'm thinking, I'm listening, right? There's capacity, let's say we take County Down or County Armagh. There's capacity up there, the infrastructure is good, the wages are more competitive, the housing costs are more competitive. If I'm thinking of moving a business up the north from the south, right? And I contact yourselves at Intertrade Ireland, what are the practical steps that somebody, because again, remember I was saying, it's your idea, like the sum of the parts are better, but we only know the parts if we know each other. And sometimes if we don't know each other, we've got to go to you, say, okay, Margaret, what are the tangibles here if for a southern business trying to move up north?
I think we would make the business aware of the opportunities that there are for not necessarily to move across the border, because that's, potentially you could say that's just displacing from one jurisdiction to the other. But would we make them aware?
Did we ever do that?
Absolutely not. What we'd make them aware of are the opportunities for the trade opportunities, the opportunities for collaboration, depending on what sector that they are in. So we support businesses every day to trade across the border. So from a business in County Louth to trade into Northern Ireland, there are unique opportunities in Northern Ireland for businesses trading both ways. Prior to the pandemic hitting in 2020, cross-border trade was at an all-time high. We know that cross-border trade is highly, supply chains are highly interlinked across the border. So it's a case of cooperation. It's not either or locating in one jurisdiction or the other. It's about coming together, and what you can do together is much more effective.
I was always thinking, you know what I'm always amazed about, Margaret, is the fact that there's two Tatos in Ireland. I don't think people know this, right? There's Southern Tato and Northern Tato, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm up with our family up in Belfast, you know, and we're chatting away, and these Tatos are produced. When our kids were really young, right, who, like all Irish kids, are, you know, gluttons for Tatos, right? You could see the Southern kids going, what exactly is this? What exactly is this? So I'm just articulating to the world that the differences are so crazy at one level that there's even two packets of Tato on this thing. But we will get there. I think a sign of success, Margaret, is one packet of Tato across the border. Margaret, thank you so much for talking to me. Thank you so much. Now I want to go to Trevor Lockhart of Fane Valley Food Cooperative in County Armagh. If you haven't been to County Armagh is a gem. Armagh City itself is an absolute gem. Armagh City itself is a most beautiful, historic, monumental city in and of itself. But the county, and the reason I'm telling you this is I was only up there not that long ago, went for a drive around the north. And, you know, usually in the north you go around you go up to Cushendall and you go up to Rathlin or Ballycastle and around Giant's Causeway. But inland, Armagh, beautiful rolling drumlins. But what will really amaze you is the extraordinary amount of orchards, something we don't see that much of outside around Kilkenny and Carlow in the south. Armagh, beautiful neck of the woods, and I'm delighted to talk to Trevor. Trevor, how are you?
Morning, David. We're wonderful, thanks. And if work for economists ever dries up, there's a role for you in the Armagh Tourist.
Listen, I'll take it. I will take it. It's a lovely neck of the woods. Okay, let's cut to the chase. Agri-food is still Ireland's biggest indigenous industry by a country mile. Agri-food and tourism, but agri-food. You guys are at the epicenter. Tell me, you know, what are the big trends in agri-food right now?
Well, the agri-food industry over the last 20 years, David, has grown across the island, largely based on increasing volume output. So we produced more milk or more poultry. And of course, we've got to take cognizance now of the collective desire to produce food, being sensitive to our obligations towards the environment. So that will require us to adapt and change. But I think it will also require us to shift the emphasis of how we produce food, to think more about how do we add value to food, because we'll not achieve the same volume growth in the next 20 years. We have to innovate, and we have to look at the functional properties of food and how can we build on that. And that will require collaborations and partnerships in the pre-competitive phases of food innovation, automation and R&D. And that's where this corridor can really come into play. Economies work best whenever government centrally, locally, and business work together in partnership. And there's marvellous opportunity. Producing food is one of the wonderful things and great things we do on the island, but we will have to adapt and change to ensure that we exploit the full advantages for the future.
But it's very interesting, Trevor, you're talking about that, because you look at a country like Netherlands or Denmark. These are small countries, arguably not as blessed environmentally as we are, yet they have extraordinary food exports, extraordinary. And as you say, they're adding value. In the old days, Ireland, we remember years ago, we'd basically export, cattle, export live cattle. A really stupid business to be in for the long term. Explain to me how you see, for example, the cooperation between both sides getting to this sweet spot where Ireland is producing not just food, but high value added food, generating incomes, employment and wealth for everybody involved.
Well, David, certainly one of the things we do in Ireland, we obviously produce an awful lot more food than we consume. So we're an outward looking region, and we have to make ourselves attractive right across the world. And the opportunity for Ireland is to do that in a way where we become the most sustainable food producers across the world, because we've got many of those natural advantages that we've alluded to. And we need to complement that then with our knowledge and understanding of the functional properties of food, and play on the potential to link together the greater connection between food, diet, health and nutrition. And because we can't keep running health services on the basis of us all eating whatever we want and expecting health services to fix us when it goes wrong. We will have to be adopting that more responsible approach to linking food, diet, and how we produce it. And that's the opportunity for Ireland. And I'm confident that with the economic corridor and the opportunity it presents, that those benefits can be cascaded, not just along the corridor, but right across the island.
Derek, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much. Just a very quick question. You know, the Brexit thing, right? I'm talking the Brexit thing in terms of your business, okay? Because when we were reading about Brexit, agriculture was front and center to people's concerns. Where are we now with that?
Well, at this point in time, I guess for food producers in the island of Ireland, we can operate our supply chains largely unaffected. That's kind of business as usual. The key pressure point is obviously more in the east-west axis at the moment. That's a very important market for both Ireland North and South. And that movement is happening, but there are logistical, paperwork, bureaucracy constraints there that need to be addressed. And more particularly coming from GB into Ireland is particularly problematic in some sectors at the moment. What we have to do is actually stand back and look at this on the basis of risk. What we're doing at the minute is we're trying to fix a new problem with an old set of rules that were designed 20 years ago. What we need to do is sit down and actually say, well, what is the risk to the internal market? How can we actually protect that? And I think if we design controls linked to those risks, rather than using a rule book that's long out of date, then I think there are solutions.
Trevor Lockhart, listen, thank you very much. It's very nice again to hear solutions to these issues rather than just talking around them. Trevor, thank you very much. And you might remember, I'll tell you, back to Armagh, not that I'm working for the Armagh Council or anything, but if you do fancy it, the minister was talking about cricket in Malahide. What is the most beautiful thing about Armagh city is right in the middle, in the green in the city, is probably the most impressive cricket crease I've ever seen in terms of location. Isn't it just there right in the center of the city?
Right in the middle of the city, David, yes, and just nicely located between all the historic features that anybody visiting Armagh would want to make sure they pay a visit to. So definitely well worth the trip.
Exactly. You can imagine Jonathan Swift was educated and had a deaconry up there. You can imagine him sitting in those Georgian buildings watching the cricket many years ago. Lovely, lovely, lovely image. Great stuff, Trevor. I'm going to move along. Thank you so much. I want to now talk to Professor Dara Keogh, the president of DCU. Dara, where are you?
I'm in Albert College in DCU here in Glasnevin. So there's a nice All-Ireland connection there with the association with Prince Albert.
Prince Albert, yeah, an interesting man.
Yeah.
We could go off on a tangent.
We could. We'll have to be disciplined. Yeah.
I've been told in my ear not to be going off on tangents. Now, tell me, I mean, DCU has been growing phenomenally, right? To what extent do you think, I want to kind of twist it before, what DC, it's like that JFK, it's not what your country can do for you, it's what you
can do, yeah.
Exactly. To what extent is DCU's success related to this dynamic that we're talking about?
Yeah, I think absolutely, because it's in DCU's DNA. Engagement is what we do. It's what we were established to do 40 years ago, and it's what we do. We are a place-based university, but we have a global reach and global ambitions. In your piece at the outset, David, I think you put it very nicely, and it's been repeated by other contributors since, that this corridor, this is one, David Connolly there on Twitter contributed, that 160 kilometres between O'Connell Street and Donegal Square, that space has the potential to shape our future and transform our worlds. The mission of DCU is to transform lives and societies. So what we do is absolutely aligned with the ambitions of the councils, with industry, with enterprise, and Ulster University. So we hope to put that world together. When Barack Obama spoke about the post-COVID world and the at all costs, we must not return to the way we were, but to build the world the way it should be and the way it could be. And if you take that enterprise train again and look out the window in the counties as we go from Dublin to Belfast or vice versa. It's a physically beautiful space, as you said about the Netherlands or Denmark. We could rebuild that world together in an integrated fashion between the councils, between industry and between universities to make it one of the most desirable and sustainable areas in Europe to locate, to live, to flourish and to thrive. And that's the ambition that people around the screens and have set themselves today, to make this the most desirable location to work, to live and to flourish.
Well, I mean, I think this is fascinating for me, and it's kind of music to my ears, because I think it was somebody who said about COVID, when people said, let's get back to normal, I can't wait to get back to normal. Somebody, I think it was Arundhati Roy, the Indian writer.
Yes.
She said, well, let's not get back to normal, because normal is how we got here. It was a really good way of looking at things.
I mean, and somebody said about the olden days, the good old days, is the only thing good about the good old days is that they won't come back. But I think that the challenge for us now is to rebuild, and that's why the collaboration around this room is so important. That we are dedicated to building a better world. And we've spoken about sustainable resources. The most sustainable resource and investment in its entirety is human talent, the individual. And that's what we do in the university. We grow talent. And you speak about the shipyards, you talk about the orchards and the orchards of Armagh. What was the key to their success? It was the people who planted the trees, who built the ships. And what we need to do at universities again, and what we commit ourselves every day when we put on our Superman capes and come to work, is to transform lives and societies, to enable people at every stage in their career to develop their potential so they can grow and they can contribute back, as I say, and in this case, to the region.
Well, Darragh, it's lovely to end on such a sort of an up, and again, because we are talking about making people's lives better. That's what we're actually talking about. Sometimes you talk about this economics and you talk about GDP and inflation and current accounts, but actually, as you know, Darragh, it's about what I would describe as little mutinies going off in people's heads. You know, I love a mutiny. I've always loved a mutiny. And these little mutants say, I can do that.
Yeah, and I mean, one last thing, the other thing, even on the Twitter feed there, you can see all kinds of stakeholders, the chambers, the industry, the employers, schools, transport. There's huge ambition and expectation behind this partnership. And the challenge for us will be to deliver that new world as it should be and as it could be.
Well, speaking of Twitter, if you haven't contacted us on Twitter, it's hashtag DBEC on Twitter. We would love to hear from you. Darragh, thank you so much again, and thank you so much for contributing. And everybody in this very busy panel, because it is busy, thank you all very much indeed. And we hope to hear from you in the future. I was hoping now, next time we get up north, do an intertrade gig. Margaret, I did the Waterfront Hall. I want to play the Odyssey, okay? I want to play the Odyssey. Right, so next intertrade gig, that should be our objective, to be back together either in Dublin or in Belfast.
And new investments to be made right across the corridor. That's what this corridor is really all about. That's what it is setting out to achieve. And I think we can really do this at pace now. If we start to think differently about our economic footprints on this island, that economic experiment that we talked about earlier on, but this particular economic footprint is really the most significant. We've heard why from our universities, because it brings scale, it has a really useful labour market, it already has those world-class assets and expertise, which I think, if shared, will deliver many more jobs and many more than the sum of its parts, as was mentioned by Anne-Marie earlier on. It already has great clusters of key growth sectors, some of whom you've heard from this morning on this call, whether that's in ICT, financial services, or whether that's in agri-food or advanced manufacturing. And those are the sectors that are really ripe for expansion, according to all of that analysis of future megatrends. David, you're an economist, so you'll know all about megatrends. For Belfast, and of course I would talk about Belfast because that's where I'm from and its sun is shining here today as well. I think that this corridor will add significant value to what's been happening here already, real success in FDI, but also the investment that is being made through the Belfast City Region deal, which is a co-investment of £1 billion by the UK government, the Northern Ireland government, and the 6 councils, which some of whom sit along this corridor. And that investment will go into research and development hubs, building our digital capabilities, building more tourist attractions and more infrastructure. So why not increase the economic dividends that this can have by working with the other cities along the corridor to share that innovation and that business collaboration and really boost our capabilities at scale. The corridor for me and for many others really is a no-brainer. I know from talking to the World Economic Forum recently, they feel exactly the same. You just have to look at the successes of other international corridors, arcs or circles, take your pick, whatever you want to call them. The Northern Powerhouse is one, the Copenhagen-Malmö Economic Region, Brainport in Eindhoven, and of course we've mentioned the Oxford-Cambridge arc as well in the UK. But we've talked about our own Dublin Belfast corridor for many years, and many great people have been involved in that conversation going way back to Sir George Quigley in 1992, many mayors, many politicians, many business leaders and organisations like IBEC and CBI. We have some of those people in the audience today, like David Gavigan, like Danny McCoy, who have been real advocates of this for many years. They're all believers. I hope today that you also become a believer. But what was lacking before was a burning platform. Now we have that, and now please let us not waste a good crisis. The opportunity really exists now to create this globally significant corridor, which will create competitive advantage in those key sectors with a real focus on innovation and world-leading science and technology and education and skills, because you're right, it's all about the people and the talent as well. So I think for me, it is feasible to think about 2040. This corridor could be home to well over 3 million people and support 2 million higher value jobs. That's what we need to boost productivity. And we know many of the businesses you've heard about already, they're already way ahead of us. They're identifying those opportunities of having a presence on both sides of the border. So the development of the corridor, of course, can't be exclusive. It must sit alongside other key sub-regional development frameworks, such as the Northwest Strategic Growth Partnership, for example, because this corridor and other economic initiatives must benefit people right across this island. Connectivity is clearly key, and we've talked about the need for investment, but at least those conversations are now happening across both governments. And of course, we have the North-South Ministerial Council working on a feasibility study to bring forward that fast train. But for me, we need to get the fundamentals right. We need to start to deliver those tangible projects that were mentioned earlier on. We need to have clarity about our joint ambitions for growing jobs and those sectoral clusters. We really need to ramp up the sharing of research and development expertise across our universities and create those ecosystems for innovation and entrepreneurship, maximising the impact that those city deals will have in the north and the innovation districts and smart districts will have along the whole corridor. We actually do owe this to our people across the island as we come out of COVID, as we really reshape our cities and towns in a way we've never experienced before, and we look to create new types of jobs. People today, we all around this call, need to see hope and leadership on many fronts, and I think this corridor is absolutely central to doing that at scale. So I guess for me, the question for all of you today is, are you going to get on board this metaphoric fast train and make the vision of this economic corridor a reality? Are you going to cause those little mutinies and bring them all together in one big mutiny to make this a real success and share the passion you've heard right across the board from our businesses and ministers today? We need this support from you to make it a real and lasting success, and it will take a joined up effort across all our sectors. As a partnership of local authorities, 8 right along the corridor, 4 in the south, 4 in the north, we're really excited about driving this forward from a bottom-up approach, but we know that's only one part of the picture. But the important steps that we're taking now to drive this forward are that we're setting up a new politically led governance structure who will have oversight and drive the day-to-day activity. We'll have 3 representatives from each of the 8 councils along that corridor, and you can see those representatives on your screen just now. And they'll be holding their first meeting really soon to elect a chair for that board, and they will oversee the development of these tangible projects, this programme of work. And the programme will be focused on growing Indigenous business in those key sectors and attracting more investment. So prioritising research and development and innovation centres of excellence and linking them up together, importantly, developing future-proof skills, that focus on growing those key sectoral clusters, alignment of our support for entrepreneurship across the corridor, and of course, a refocusing of our energy to look at how we build resilience and create a zero carbon economy. But we do need your input. And so today, clearly you've been giving it to us through our Twitter account, but we want you to keep that going. We will be asking for your feedback after today. And we will be holding more webinars to provide a real platform for regional and national and international sharing of those ideas and initiatives. And so you can keep track of how we're progressing. So we know it's only the start. We really need to build more political support, more business support, and create better joined up policies and more investment. However, for now, we're asking you as partners across the private and public sector really to big this up, build on this brand. We're asking for businesses and enterprise agencies to collaborate really well together. We're calling on governments to do more with policy and investment, and for our anchor institutions to join forces. And most of all, we need your ideas. So to finish, we hope you'll really get on board this metaphoric fast train, as today is the day I think that it actually leaves the station, whether that's Conley Street or whether that's Weaver's Cross in Belfast, and that we'll call it all those major stations along the way. And we definitely don't want you just to come along for the ride. We need you to be proactive, to build this proposition, to back the process, to be part of the structures that we're creating, to be part of the plan, and really finally help us grasp this once in a lifetime opportunity. Thank you very much, David. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much indeed, Suzanne. Thank you so much indeed. Suzanne there mentioned a gentleman called George Quigley. George Quigley was one of these extraordinary Northerners who saw in the darkest times, really in the darkest times, the opportunities that could exist if we just imagined the place a little bit more laterally, optimistically, and we got out of our entrenched positions. And it was funny when Suzanne was talking, I was thinking of Yeats and the Second Coming, the poem written about 100 years ago when this country was going into a tailspin. And the first few sentences, the first part of the poem is it goes, turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer, things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed on the world, a blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the procession of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. So think about that poem in the context of what we're talking about. What Yeats said was things do fall apart. The centre sometimes doesn't hold. Why? Because the best people lack all conviction, allowing the worst people to be full of passionate intensity. And in Ireland, right at the moment, as was the case when Yeats wrote The Second Coming, published in 1920, so pretty much symmetrical, 100 years ago, more or less. If we allow, or if we and the people who are on this call and all of you watching, if the best people, the people who really want to change and really want to see things positively, if we say, well, you know what, we've no conviction, what happens is we allow the worst people with their passionate intensity and their easy solutions and their slogans and their drama to seize control. So I think, you know, it's quite good to end with sometimes a little bit of poetry. It's not what you always expect from economics and discussions about strategy and innovation and all that good stuff. But in actual fact, what Suzanne was talking about is an opportunity for all of us. The train isn't leaving any station. Everybody can get on. And what I think we can do, and by the way, we have a press conference after this, so by all means join us in the press conference. But what I think we can do, at the end of having heard the Taoiseach, we heard the Finance Minister of Northern Ireland, we heard the British Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Deputy Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. We had our own ministers, we've had stakeholders, we've had businesses, we've had people from the local authorities, etc., right? We've got academics all together. Now is the time to reimagine Ireland, to put this corridor at the centre, and to reimagine the country for the 21st century. Thank you very much for listening to us. I hope you found this as fascinating and invigorating as I did, and we'll see you all shortly. Thank you very much indeed.